Welcome on this very special dialogue with Dozie on this Monday. This is November the 11th. This is the night that in America we celebrate Veterans Day. We celebrate it on this night, whether it falls on this night or not. It's always the second Monday in the year. I think I'm right about that. It works well with school calendar and all of that stuff. But we're here tonight. We're going to celebrate our veterans amongst many things tonight. I wanted to, this show we almost didn't have a show, and I was able to get my next guest, classmate, neighbor, good friend, reacquainted after, 50 years actually, since we've seen each other at our reunion this summer. And he is a 50-year veteran. I mean, he is a veteran, 20-year veteran of the United States Navy. And he's going to come on and talk about some of the experiences and the opportunities and all of those things tonight. And maybe get him to stick around or talk something else, but we're going to be on and let him go. We're going to talk about some of the world events. My good friend, James Preston, Jimmy, JP Preston. Jimmy, what's up, man?
Hello, Dozie. How's it going?
I'm good, man. I just want to say again, 10,000 thank yous, because before I spoke to you, we were thinking of not doing the show because I'm just wiped out. Just got back in town off the road, which I'm on the road all the time. But anyway, thank you, because I just would have hated for us not to honor our veterans tonight. And you,
absolutely,
yes, sir. You're so deserving, so deserving. How long you been out of the service, JP? I know you told me at the reunion you had a second career. Just how long have you been away from the Navy?
Yeah, I enlisted in 1977, April of 77, retired in April of 2001. So that puts me right at having been retired for 24 years.
Oh, you served 24 years?
Yes, active duty. I retired.
Oh my gosh. Well, I got to tell you this. This is kind of funny. So there were 5 Preston boys, if I'm not mistaken, that were growing up a street or two behind us when we were growing up. The 3 Vonners. There were 5 Prestons, and I was actually real close to Russell, the big brother. But of the 5 brothers, and I knew Joe well, and I ended up coaching Richard, and I met Robert more on Facebook all of these years later, because he was just a little baby when we both left home. But I got to tell you, JP, you would be the last of the 5 brothers that I knew who would go and do a military career, because you kind of like did it the Frank Sinatra way. You did it your way. What convinced you to go to the service, and what convinced you to make it a career?
Well, I was in school at the University of Florida when I graduated. I was on a accelerated program, so I really didn't have a summer when we graduated. I graduated in June, and in July I was enrolled at the University of Florida. So I really didn't have my head screwed on properly at the time. And after about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, my dad said, "Look here, boy, I'm tired of throwing money down your way, and all you doing is partying and having fun." So I knew if I wanted to continue down that scholastic path, I had to find a way to fund it myself. So I came back to Jacksonville, did a few odd jobs, if you will, trying to find my course, and I realized that wasn't the thing for me. However, I just happened to have a fraternity brother, Kappa Alpha Psi, by the way, who had enlisted in the Navy, and he was talking to me about all of the benefits of joining the military and what I should be looking for if I did decide to go down that path. And after a workplace accident, I nearly cut one of my fingers off. I knew I was going in the military, and it was going to be the Navy.
So that was my next question. What about why the Navy?
Well, because my father was in the Navy.
Okay.
And he was a steward. They called them stewards back then. Stewards are messmen. All they were allowed to do was basically be subservient to the officer corps. And I kind of liked the fact that in the Navy, you really got an opportunity to see the world, albeit not on ships. So that's what led me to the Navy.
So, Jimmy, we'll talk about the experience at the University of Florida a little later, because several of us were slated to go there, and I had a similar thing. I was coaching, and like I say, and I'm coaching one of your younger brothers.
Right.
And I really didn't Florida selected me like on a Monday. They called me and I had to report that Thursday, right before late registration, and I was right into the start of the season, and I ended up not going. So I had gone through the junior college and gotten that degree, but
Gotcha.
I thought that I was going to enjoy getting out of high school. Was not easy for me, and when I got out, I just like, phew, and then my dad said to me, I had to start school early. I had to start summer school, so I never had that summer off either. I went right straight to FJC. And so anyway,
You can relate.
yeah, I totally relate. When did you know it was going to be when did you know it was going to be a career, not just a stint?
Well, again, I only enlisted to get some more money to go back to school and take advantage of the educational benefits. However, the Navy kept making a mistake, and that mistake was they kept promoting me. and you know, after that first enlistment of 4 years, I was already at the midpoint for the highest enlisted pay grade or rank, if you will. So I got to thinking, you know what, this might not be such a bad deal after all.
So Jimmy, did you do basic? Was Orlando still open, or did you have to go out to California or up to Chicago?
No, I wasn't doing Nicole, and I told the recruiter that I was from Florida, so I knew all about Mickey World. Wasn't going to do the Orlando thing. He said, "Well, we'll send you to San Diego." Sold. That was it.
Wow.
Yeah, so I started in San Diego.
Now, for our viewers, and I tried to get our friend Bernard. I was a lot of inspiration for tonight's show came from my mother after we pulled it together at the 11th hour. She said, "Man, wouldn't it be nice for you if you had everybody from every branch on?" And I really tried to do that. Buddy Gray is a graduate. He was a 20-year airman, and Bernard was an airman. And I could have gotten every branch of the service except and didn't know anyone from the Army. But anyway, here we are. And thank you for signing on. You gave me a time limit. We'll see if I can stretch that a few minutes or two. Okay, so to give our viewers some context, Jim and I graduated high school in 74, which was right in the heart of Peace with Honor. Peace with Honor was what President Nixon had worked out to bring to end the Vietnam War, basically. But I don't know about you, but I actually knew people who died in Vietnam.
Oh yeah.
I
actually had my draft card.
Oh wow, yeah, because you're at least a year ahead of me, right? Because I started school early.
Exactly.
Wow, and it ended right before the draft ended, right before I was supposed to go and register.
Absolutely.
Well, so what was that experience like? Getting that draft card? Was the war still? Was it winding down when you got your draft card, or what was that like?
It was winding down. It really was, and I wasn't too concerned about it because I kind of stayed abreast of the news, and all indications were that we weren't going to be drafting any more young men to put them in harm's way. So that kind of like put me at ease when that started happening. So I didn't really worry about being drafted. So
for this generation, for our viewers, and a lot of you all we think and appreciate you. And of course, this show is driven by your comments and your thoughts, your sharing. So please don't hesitate to do that. To give you some idea, you're hearing this foreign language draft card. That was something that you got at age 18, or was it 16? 16?
It was 17, I believe.
17. Okay.
Yeah.
So 17. That's right. Because at 17, that's when I would have. That was what you got. That was the pre-impetus to you registering to be eligible to be registered to be drafted into the military.
Right.
There were some stipulations that kept you from being drafted. I think if you were in college, that was one. Okay, because I know they drafted my cousin out. He was at Edgewater College. He was in the band over there.
Right.
And the Marine Corps drafted him. But that was a war, everybody, that you all, thankfully the Gulf War and those skirmishes, you've heard about that, but those were wars that we had enormous advantages. But Vietnam we actually were fighting the Russians because they were supplying North Vietnamese.
The Chinese were also.
And the Chinese were too. So that's what really happens. And this is a crazy time because of what's happening with the presidential election, which I'm really trying to minimize tonight if I want to maintain my sanity. But whenever there was a war, one of the two superpowers line up on one side or the other, and basically they supplied all of just like we have been given massive assistance to Ukraine, and they'll fight directly with Russia. When Russia was fighting Afghanistan, we helped the Afghanis. When we were fighting them, they helped the Afghanis. So we always indirectly are at odds with each other. So it's going to be an interesting 4 years. Hopefully, it's just going to be 4 years. What are some of your more interesting experiences in the armed forces, Jim?
Oh wow, more interesting.
Now that's what I expect to hear from you.
Ooh, Lord. I'm going to keep it PG. So basically, I was one of those kind of guys who I stayed with my detailer in Washington D.C. That was the guy who had control of where you were stationed. So I would have to say one of my more enjoyable tours was right here in Mayport. I was on a small ship out of Mayport. It was an FFG, a frigate, if you will, and it would roll and it would heave, and it was a minimum man ship under the minimum manning concept, where you did some of everything. And one of my duties was I was a part of the ship's boarding party. So whenever we ran across out in international waters, we ran across suspect vessels that may have been harboring weapons, smuggling weapons, smuggling drugs. I was part of that team of brave individuals that would go out in 10-foot seas on a 15-foot inflatable raft and go into the unknown armed with only a 45 and a shotgun to interdict these foreign vessels at sea. You know, a lot of people not aware, when you think military, you think about everything being a battle, but it's not always about knowing who your enemy is or what type of danger you're about to go into, because this was just a routine patrol every day. We did this for 6 months, and we'd come across suspect vessels that we already had their nomenclature or their signature, if you will, of them out there in the seas doing funny things, and that would lead us to board them. So I would have to say that was one of my more interesting endeavors, being a part of that boarding party.
That's not interesting. That's almost scary, borderline suicide.
It's very dangerous indeed.
Yeah, because you are I don't know on a frigate like that, you couldn't have a large crew, and then you don't have the weaponry, or I mean, it looked like they would have, I guess, for COVID, not COVID, but keeping things on the down low. I guess that's why it's a smaller vessel. Is that why?
Not necessarily. We had a Coast Guard detachment also. And basically, the Coast Guard were in charge of the actual interdiction at sea in international waters. We were basically just the platform for that. However, because of the size of our ship and the size of the Coast Guard detachment, we took a major role in the action, and they got pretty much the credit for whatever we found or whatever came about from the interdiction at sea.
Yeah, I'm glad you clarified that, because I went on to FJC and became a good friend with a brother who finished high school the year we did from Rains, who did a career in the Coast Guard. And I guess I really never fully knew their responsibilities until he and I talked recently. And then I just saw episode on 60 Minutes when you talked about those swelling waves. And I looked at that and I said, "Wow, that's crazy, amazing."
Oh yeah, it's very dangerous environment, because you have to time your steps with the rolling of the raft, if you will. So if you're out in 10-foot seas, so the raft, based on the sea state, it's going to increase in height by say 5 or 6 feet, and then it's going to suddenly drop about 5 or 6 feet. So if you're caught in the middle, you're either going to get slammed against the ship and possibly get crushed to death, or you're going to misstep and step off the raft and drown in all of that deep water.
So on this Veterans Day, I'm talking with a dear friend, reunited, James Preston, who is a veteran of the 24th-year veteran of the United States Navy. We exist on your comments and your interjection to our Facebook and YouTube community. Feel free to hop on and share that with us. I saw that episode of 60 Minutes that I was talking about it because we are doing living in South Florida. We are avid. When I say avid, my wife and I just returned off of a short road trip, and that's about as far as I'm gonna get her in a car anymore because we're avid cruisers, and she is the cruise guru. I looked at that episode because I saw those Coast Guard frigates or whatever those boats were slamming against those amazing whales and amazing waves. And we're not too far away from a cross-continental cruise. And somebody last year told us, say, well, that time of year you're going to be out, there's not a great time to be in the middle of the Atlantic. So I've been trying to reassure myself. And so I guess there's absolutely no chance that even the largest Navy ship is anywhere likened to a cruise ship, right?
You could probably say maybe an aircraft carrier for sure. You know, an aircraft carrier has up to 210 aircraft of different types: fighter jets, attack jets, helicopters, support aircraft, and it has a complement of up to 4,000 people just to run the ship. So when you take that and you combine it with another, say if you've got 5 or 6, 7 or 8, maybe 10 squadrons, and each squadron having 250 people attached to that, it gets kind of top heavy on a cruise. On an aircraft carrier. So I would equate that with a cruise ship. As far as the ride.
How would you equate the comfort level, the luxury level?
Hey, cold showers was my thing, baby. But the advantage in the Navy is if you can get aboard a nuclear powered ship, those are the best ships because they always have hot water. And I've been on both, one conventional propulsion and one nuclear propulsion. And the nukes outweigh the conventional, bar none. Can't beat them.
So the 24 years that you spent in the Navy, what was the correlation of time land-based, stationed on land, or actually on the water?
Yeah, sure. In the Navy, you have a seashore rotation, and it's all dependent on what your job is in the Navy. So as an example, if let's say you're a ship's policeman, master at arms, then you're going to have a rotation of maybe 4 years at sea and 2 years on shore. However, if you're in an administrative rank, which is position, which is what I was in, I would have a rotation of 3 years at sea and 4 years ashore. However, what a lot of people don't understand about the Navy is every place that the Navy has bases is, how do I want to say this? You don't always have to go on a ship to satisfy shore rotation. For instance, I was stationed in the Bahamas for a year and a half. That counted as part of my sea rotation because it was out of the continental United States. Or there are bases over in Italy, there are bases in Spain, there are bases in Greece, there are bases in all over the world that count towards your seashore rotation. So for me, believe it or not, out of those 24 years, I spent 3 years on a ship in Mayport, and the aircraft carrier that I was on out of Norfolk, Virginia, I was only on that ship when we went out to sea for extended periods of time. We would fly up from Cecil Field to Norfolk, Virginia to board the ship and go out to sea on that. So for all intents and purposes, I might have a total of 4 years of total sea time out of 24 years of active naval service.
So did you get land? I don't know what's the term.
Shore duty.
So did you miss land when you were on the ocean for extended periods of time?
Oh, of course. You miss a lot of things. You miss going for a jog in the park. You miss going up to McDonald's for a burger. You miss going shopping at the mall. You miss all of those types of things. However, you transition easily to life at sea because you realize this is what you signed up for, and there are some variations on what you're missing. For instance, when we were out at sea for more than 30 days, straight 30 days without pulling into any country or anything, we would have what's known as beach picnics, topside picnics on the top of the ship. We'd get the grills out and we'd have regular old cookouts. There's a ship's store. All ships have stores where you can go in and buy health and comfort type items. You want some chips, you want a pair of pants, you want to buy a new uniform item, so you could do a little shopping. It just wasn't, classy shopping and that type of thing.
Wow. Well, so I guess we went on we did a cruise probably 10 years ago. It was our first balcony. And there was something brewing down. It was a little bit down, but it was going to be in the direction we were heading, and I knew the waters would be affected. I kept calling the cruise line, which was based out of Seattle. I kept calling them every day leading up to the last week and said, "No, you're good. There's not going to be any changes on the ship. You're going to be fine." The first thing we heard when the captain, right before Bon Voyage, the captain said, "We're going to be avoiding a little disturbance at sea, so we're going to go west and curve around east." So what that experience did, I think it was like 4 days, 3, maybe 4 days before we saw the coast of Cuba from a distance, before we saw land. And these are like sea days, but 4 days without seeing land, that was a different experience. So you never, that was just like a day in the park for you, I guess.
Oh, yeah. So just imagine 35, 40, 55 days of seeing nothing but the water.
Yeah, we'll have that. We'll do 6 days when we're headed back from this next day. So the Air Force, the Army, be all you can be, the few, the proud, the Marines. None of that stuff appealed to you, huh?
No, not at all. I actually we called it the Cracker Jack uniform. That's the uniform that, you had the little scarf in the front tied into a nice little knot, had the little flaps on the back, the bell-bottom pants and the blousey top with the white cap that sat on your head, cocked to the side so valiantly. Yeah, I didn't want to be a Marine because, to be honest with you, and I'm not disparaging any branch of the military because each one has its own unique mission. The Marines teach you to kill. The Army teaches you to lay out in foxholes endlessly. The Air Force teaches you how to socialize and do your job from afar. But the Navy, to me, it had all components. We had a ground component, we have a sea component, and we have an air component. And I can honestly say that out of my 24 years, I experienced every component of the Navy. So I don't have any regrets about that. I really don't.
Jimmy, we got a break. Would you stick on with me maybe 5 or 10 more minutes on the other side of the break before we let you go?
Okay, I'll do that for you.
Thank you kindly. Appreciate it.
Okay.
all of your virtual needs. I mean, every last one of you. See this face? This is a face that's been driving in the car all night long. This is what Go Giga will do for you. They'll make me appealable that you won't turn the camera right off. They got all of your virtual needs. The pandemic is over, but virtual needs will be here to stay. GoGigaCreations.com. More Go Giga. They got you. The team of the Toyas and the Marquez. They will set you up and make you look good. Now, it is the head, and they do also web building, web pages. GoGiga.com. Go ahead and hook them up right now. So this is probably where I'm going to lose my guest because I'm talking about. I know there's this big rivalry between the Marines and the Navy, but we want to celebrate the Navy today. I mean, we want to celebrate the Marines today on their birthday, which was on yesterday. The United States Marine Corps, a branch, ironically, of the United States Navy. The Marine Corps incorporates, you just heard my guests talk about their work they do with land and kind of amphibious through sea. They were commissioned through the armed forces and been a part of the Navy since June the 30th of 1834. The United States Marines has had many joint chiefs of staff. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Kelly, was one of the more recent ones just a few years ago. The United States Marine Corps has a theme: the few, the proud, and their thing is it takes a special branch of men, out of that. I leave that to those people to debate. We know that the Marines have a certain respect not only in the armed forces, but also as they return home from active duty because of the sacrifices they put in. Their basic training is something in itself. Their basic training, I'm told, is on the order of a Navy SEAL, or Army Ranger, all of the branches, special unit. We get a taste of that in the United States Marine basic training. Like I got to see my brother on the day after graduation day. I said, man, they got my brother really staked up. I want to celebrate them. In fact, two Marines who mean a whole lot to me. Our dad, Dozie Sr., he's gone on now, and my middle brother, Charles Anthony Varner. We salute you all at every Gyrene today. We shout you out on the service that you serve to the military, to all veterans. We're thankful to you. I got a veteran with me today, and he's with me. He's a good friend, classmate, James Preston, and so glad to have him and sharing with us. Jimmy, I had an affinity. Well, not really, but a recruiter came to Sandalwood when we were doing our senior year, and from the Air Force. Mm-hmm. And he grabbed my attention. I don't think I'd ever, because of the fear of war, because of Vietnam, I don't think I ever really looked at the military. But he sold a great picture about the Air Force and how there weren't many casualties of the Air Force in the skirmishes. And so he kind of got my attention. Say, wow! And then what I really thought I liked about it was that I would go to Gainesville, University of Florida, on a scholarship like our friend Buddy Gray did, and come out as a second Louis. And I said, I can do that. I can adapt. That gives me 4 years to adapt to that discipline. Even though my brother would say that there's no discipline in the Air Force compared to the Corps and other branches. So I went for it. So I because I was 16, my dad had to go with us. We went out to Naval Air Station at the time and met with a colonel in the Marine in the Air Force who was the recruiter. And when we got out to his house, the tone changed. There was nothing about ROTC at the University of Florida, any other university. I knew I had to get into the University of Florida, which I didn't think was a problem. When I got there, he started talking about where is it out in Colorado to the
academy?
Yeah, the academy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think, are you serious? You mean to tell me your tone has changed? Because I got my dad take me there that evening, and that was amazing. And my dad, I guess he saw the anxiety by which, I just had to have education attached to whatever I was going to do, my mom being a teacher and everything.
Right.
So, we got out there and the whole tone changed. It was like I never heard anything about, and so I just immediately X'd that out. And so I kept a pulse with Buddy, who was doing the ROTC thing, and he made it work for him going and finishing up. But what's some of the things about recruiting? You knew where you wanted to go. You knew what you wanted to do. What are some of the things you see in recruiting? What are the challenges in recruiting in today's armed forces where there's no drafts, but there are also no conflicts going on?
And well, the biggest challenge is getting people to qualify. You can always find a job or a skill set for someone that they may not know that they were interested in, but qualifying is the big key. You have to take the ASVAB score. I'm not quite sure what the numbers you have to attain to be able to even be considered for enlistment. But as a recruiter, you have a guy that walks into your office. He talks the talk. He presents himself as someone who would really be a good Marine, soldier, sailor, or whatever the case, but they can't pass the ASVAB score. That's a big misnomer. Or when you finally get them to pass this ASVAB score and you running them through the system, you find out that they have an arrest record, or they have felonies, or they have bankruptcies, or, bankrupt people will say, well, what does a bankruptcy have to do with joining the military? Well, if you're bankrupt, you're instantly in need of what? Money, which makes you an ideal candidate to be sought out by our communist friends to buy secrets from. So that is one of the biggest challenges for recruiting in this day and age. And I would also say that there's the economy, even though some people want to make it seem like the economy is so bad. If you want a job, one with a decent starting pay, they are available. So you're competing with the private sector as well. And there are a lot of good paying jobs out there where you don't even need a college degree to start out making pretty decent money just to begin.
So what does that test generally consist of? Is it an academic test, or is it more just?
It's very similar to the SATs that you take to get into college. It's just I hate to say it, but it's on a dumbed down level, because you don't want to get too technical with that type of a test when you're talking about military qualifications. That's all it is. It consists of a math component, an English component, a comprehension component, and I can't remember what the other component was, but it's a pretty extensive list of questions that you have to properly apply the correct answer to.
Well, and you hear more of it now, but you used to hear the tests like the SAT and ACT, because they're a real challenge now, because we got great athletes, and these kids got to pass these tests to get into these schools.
Right.
And I would say, unfortunately, I can't ethically say fortunately, but back in the days, kids kind of got past that by whatever means, and now they're actually having to sit there and take those tests.
Mm-hmm.
But my contention, and I can appreciate you saying a dumbed down version. My contention about these tests, and I don't think I really saw it until I prepared to go to seminary, and I had been out of schools for 10 years, well, about 12 years, because I was a policeman, and I went to UCF and finished school, and then headed on to seminary. But the school that I really wanted to go to do my grad work required the GRE, and we had my family. We were living in Daytona at the time, and we'd gone to Orlando the night prior to, and we'd gone to a gospel concert, and we ate, and it was like 2:00 when we got back in the morning. I said, I almost studied the time for the test. I was tired. It took everything for me to get up to drive over to Stetson and take the test. When I saw the test, I was glad that I didn't spend 1 second studying for it, because the test was so far beyond what I would ever. And when I went to seminary, and I had heard people talk about it and everything, and it would be rigorous, it would be trying and testing and all of that. And those things it just required your time. but it was the complexity of those tests were far beyond anything you'd ever see in the classroom. That's what the kids are coming back to us saying now, saying, Coach, you mean to tell me college is going to be that tough? And I said, well, number one, I know you can have all the assistants in the world as an athlete, but it won't be anywhere near to that extreme. And I don't know why. What's the purpose of this? A simple SAT or ACT is 10 times, you're talking about dumbing it down, it's 10 times accelerated to what you will experience. And we always claim, we make the statement that they're culturally insensitive. I think they're academically insensitive. I mean, you have to be a brainiac to do well on a test that's not going to be applicable. The complexity of it does not correlate to what you're going to do in college. That's for another argument. I want to kind of talk about some of the things you experienced on the other side of retirement from the Navy. What are some of your complaints and concerns about the treatment of veterans on this Veterans Day?
Oh, wow. I can honestly say that I never experienced any treatment as far as being a veteran. I think it's because of, we're in the 21st century now, and people have truly understood what the all volunteer military is about. This is something that, one, this country needs, and two, the people serving, they wanted to do it for whatever reason, whether it was Chevrolet and apple pie, whether it's to get that free college education, whether it was to gain some free medical for the family, whatever the case may be. But I never received any negative treatment. However, I can say that once I retired, my transition from 24 years of military life to the civilian world was quite challenging.
Wow. Can you talk about that? That's interesting.
Yeah, because, in the military, you've probably heard this before, but everything in the military is structured. You wake up at Reveille. Reveille goes off the same time every day, no doubt about it. You eat chow every day at the same time. Everything was structured, even when you went out to do your work assignments, even holding your troops accountable for results. You made corrections in real time. You didn't go back and do a root cause analysis to determine how we could have done things differently, what the cause and effect was. If I didn't do this is no. However, when I went into the civilian world, my first job was with Sprint as a manager there, and then I went to Blue Cross Blue Shield, Florida Blue, as an operations manager. And my biggest challenge was not being so straightforward with demands for results. I did display compassion. I understand what empathy is all about, but it's just different when you're in the military. Because don't get me wrong, leaders in the military display empathy and compassion. However, they do it with a much more how do I want to say, stern effect, so that you really understand, okay, I really messed this up. I better not ever do that again, or so forth, so forth. In the civilian community, the consequences for not providing results, not performing, they weren't as attuned to being corrected, if you will, or having consequences associated with failure. And that was one of my biggest challenges.
I absolutely love the way you put that out, because that was going to be in my next series of questions. Having attained the promotions that in retiring to high level, how was it having men and women report to you and answer to you and responsible to you, and then coming back to you talk about the readjustment and having leadership roles in the private sector. How do you adapt to that? How do you adapt to that?
I just had to reinvent myself. I had to look in the mirror and say, you know what? I really, because the biggest component to change is accepting the fact that change needs to occur. And the second part is, okay, who's responsible for that change? Well, it's always going to be you, me. I was responsible for that. Nobody could teach me how to lead in the civilian community. I had to figure that out for myself. And I did. I had a great vice president at Florida Blue who gave me some books to read. It was almost like going to the principal's office. It was almost like going to Trawick's office back when we were at Sandalwood. I always found myself in the vice president's office because someone said, James spoke to me in this manner. James didn't acknowledge this. James this, James that. But it was, they never, ever, ever took ownership that, well, maybe it's you that's causing all of these issues and opportunities. So I had to quickly readjust to understand that's the way it is in the civilian community, and that helped me transition on towards a successful civilian career.
So you talk about reinventing yourself, and you were here. We both slapping 70, wrap it upside the head, and here I am having to reinvent myself.
Yeah.
Our whole football staff. Let me see. I don't want to say this. Retired. They won a championship at the previous school they were at. We bit this school. They've taken to 3 levels deep in the playoffs several times. But they kind of walked out at the end of the year and say, that's it. I can't deal with the 2024 generation. I can't. I relate to that. And even of the staff that I've served with the last 17 years. I was probably more of the hardliner because, raised by a Marine and expectations were that, and it was sir, and you did what you had to do, and there was no questions about it. So I'm now having to reinvent our head coach he played in the league a couple of years. He actually played with my son in high school, but he went on to the league. My son with the fan, but he went on to Pittsburgh to the league. We got to talk about the Steelers before we get off. And he's tremendously laid back, which helps, but he does enforce discipline. And I guess, and we'll do a show over into the New Year's about how do we reach our children of this. Some people have said it's just that parents have just given up, and parents have just become too lax, and parents have taken on new school. In our community, we say we're trying to do what we saw people across the track do with their kids. Their kids might have been successful, but they were not mannerable, they were not ethical, and all of that, moral, and all of those things. How do you kind of get a read on that? I'm sure you probably like in that grandpa stage like me. How do you get a read on how we really reach our children today? It's taking everything in me. It's challenging me to reinvent myself. I spent a weekend doing that a few weeks ago. In fact, how do we reach down to this generation?
If I had the straightforward answer to that, I'd be selling it and be quite rich, because I think the only way you have to share your history with the kids in today's culture, because these kids and youngsters, young people in general, they are from such an electronic age where everything was so readily available to them. You want to know the answer to something, Google it. You want to plot a trip to Mexico, you map it out on Google Maps, whereas we rolled our sleeves up and we did the hard work through the encyclopedias, through the thesauruses, we really worked hard. They don't really work as hard as we did. They may be smarter because they have that electronic advantage. So, that's a good question. That's a tough question. And I really can't put my finger on how to do that. Even with my grandkids, I try to relate to them. Some I get through to and they get it. And there's some who, I'm not saying they're being reluctant to understand, but they want to do it their way,
Yeah. So, I just left. I just said like that. I get you on that. I get you on that. An example is a few weeks ago, we were, let's see, we lost one game, but we were pretty much, and that was to a private school, which has, Bowles in Jacksonville, but as I remember, if you put together a good Sandalwood team, you could compete with Bowles. St. Thomas and American Heritage and Chaminade down here, they're always in the top national championship because they recruit kids from all over the country. They need a kicker to bring somebody in from South America. So playing those teams are challenging. It's going to take. We played against Joey Bosa, We had those guys for 3 years. You had Joey Bosa on one side, and you had Nicholas on the other, and there was another kid who didn't quite make it named Moulton in the middle. And I could hear our coordinator calling the plays and he said, "Where's freaking Bosa? But where's little Bosa? Where's big Bosa?" So that was kind of what you had to deal with. So we lost to a team like that, but we pretty much were undefeated amongst regular kids, regular high schools, private, public schools, and we lost the game. And there were a group, and most of the kids who did this were seniors, and I was just so disappointed. They failed to go and get in the line to go across and shake their hand. It was a neighborhood rivalry. It was like us playing Parker, and it hurt to lose the game. But we lost, and my mindset was, of all the games that we won this season, in the last few seconds, because a team fumbled on the 1 yard line or threw an interception as they were driving down the field, and those kids came across the field and shook our hands, or for our kids who went to shake their hands after the game, what gives you the right that you don't have to shake their hands? So I really was just furious. I mean, I contemplated everything from letting it go and joining my guys who had already done it to just insisting on just. And then we came back the following week with a short week, a Thursday night game. So you really couldn't, you didn't want to kill them with physical stuff that first part of the week. And I think we lost a day of practice to the Storm. So I was just contemplating, and it just came to me. In my faith. In my faith tradition, I'll say God just put it on my spirit, put it in my spirit to just say, have them stand up in front of the team and tell the team why they're so special, that unlike the rest of these guys who went to shake their hands, they didn't have to. And that turned out to be a good therapy. And I said that to say that you talk about reinventing, we just have to, because we have to resolve that it's not, the cause is too great. We can't give up. We can't give up on our grandkids because they're not going to respond to our type of discipline. They don't know what it's like or whatever. But we have to reinvent ourselves to be able to get the point across. And that turned out to be so effective that day. Really,
absolutely.
Yeah. So I appreciate you using that word, reinvent. Some of the things that I've seen veteran needs. So I do this democracy thing in my retirement. It's just a little sidekick I do. I do with the 501(c) Faith in Florida, and I'm a democracy fellow, and we promote voters registration and voter education. It's a little challenging here in this state after what happened recently.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I'm going to have to do is we got to reinvent ourselves to get the message out now, because I deal with these young people who, you talked about the electronic ages. There've been some marvelous, some of the rappers put together some marvelous democracy videos to bring them into the system and make them want to be a part of a system which you and I know affects us. This tax thing is going to affect. It's probably going to be we middle class that's going to suffer from this. But you only get 2 minutes, because after 2 minutes they got the devices back out and they're doing whatever they're doing. So it's really challenging, but the challenge is worth it. But one of the things I've done is I've dealt with a lot of unhoused populations, and most of that unhoused population is a homeless, tremendous homeless population. And some of those are not homeless. The unhoused is a veteran population, and everybody who is unhoused is not addicted or they're not mentally ill. It could just be a simple thing that puts them. Shaq gives a great illustration of having played a game and fallen short and giving his best effort and being upset. And his dad, Sarge, picked him up that morning and took him to the homeless community and let him talk to a family, made him treat that family to dinner, put him up a couple nights and stuff like that. And the point he's trying to make, you haven't lost anything. This is real loss, and this is real world. So I said all of that was to say this: how can we reach our homeless, our veterans? How can we restore hope in them? I know PTSD is real. I know stress thing, all of that stuff is real. I know having lost, being exposed to various chemicals. I know all of that; those are real. How can we get them to where they function in society? And we don't know how challenging it's going to be now, but what are some of the things that we can do to just bring them back to the discipline that got them through at least a stint in the military?
That's a good question too, because I, like you, do a lot of work with unhoused veterans, low-income seniors, as well as mentally challenged adults. And from the veterans that I work with, the commonality is that they want a pity party. That's just my opinion. They don't want to put in the hard work. They feel that because they are a veteran, things should be given to them as opposed to working for it. So to say that they need a different type of support system, I would say they don't. They just need to, again, recognize where the challenge begins in the mirror and be willing to take harsh feedback, critical feedback, and react positively to it to change themselves. Because I don't know the type of populace that you work with, but the unhoused veterans that are in our facility, man, we have cats that are just as old as I am who've been homeless for 20 and 30 years. How
Yeah,
do you help somebody like that?
yeah,
It's impossible pretty much. So the best thing you can do is try to make them comfortable, if you will, or try to be human to them. But that mental health thing, man, a lot of those cats have mental issues that are so far beneath the surface. I'm not educated enough, nor qualified enough to even begin to come up with a care plan that will project them towards success. And I say that to say I have a guy who was one of my Navy buddies. I've known him since my days at Cecil Field. That's going back into the late 80s, early 90s. Always, always, always been a standout guy as far as a friend. Just found out today, on Veterans Day, he committed suicide yesterday.
oh my
Just
God.
found this out. Now,
Oh,
the key to that is there was no indications ever that this guy had a mental opportunity. He had some health challenges, but they were being addressed. He wasn't an illiterate person. He worked in the school system. I mean, he just committed suicide. How do you respond to that? What do? You don't know what was going through his head because I mean the guy drove a Mercedes Benz, had a nice condo. Of course he was divorced, but so to say veterans are different from the civilian populace, they're not. They're human beings because remember, all veterans come from and came from the civilian populace.
well, that
So
was
that's a tough one.
that suicide along with depression was one of the things when I was mentioning some of the maladies that they suffer on the other side
Oh
of
yeah.
that I didn't mention, but yeah, that kind
Hmm.
of brings home. Jimmy, you will never ever know how you transformed the last 3 hours of my life tonight. This went from us maybe doing a rerun, um, or maybe not doing a show. But I could not imagine not honoring our veterans. And certainly, man, we honor you to the utmost for what you have done for our country and for the sacrifice that you made. Yes, you were paid. Yes, you were promoted. But I guarantee it would not have been worth the sacrifice had we lost you to your service. And just thank you 10,000 times for what you've done for the United States of America. And thank you for coming on tonight at the absolute 11th hour. You rescued this show, and my mother, when I told her, my mother's 94 now, she'll get. When I told her that Jane Preston was coming on, she said, "I'm going to be there for this." She even gave me the idea of what we did for the midway point. So thank
Okay.
you so
Cool.
very, very much.
Oh, quite pleasure. I thank you for thinking to have me on board. I hope the word reached somebody so that they understand that the military was a great way of life. It really was. And just in closing, I still get calls from guys who served under me 20, 25 years ago to thank me for being so hard nosed and straightforward with them that they were able to achieve the rank that I retired at and even in some cases surpass it. So That's a good feeling right there.
Jimmy, I'm trusting you at that, but it's just so funny to hear, because I went to school with you and I knew you were hardcore back then. You were about fun, man.
Yes, I was.
I was telling my wife you were probably the most charismatic person I know on our grade level, and probably in all of Sandalwood when we were there those 3 years. But thank you so much. We'll be calling on you in the future. You because you're multifaceted beyond military, and just thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bless the family, man.
All right.
All right. So we want to close out tonight's show in the next 20 seconds. So grateful to have my buddy join us tonight. We want to close out tonight's show, and we just want to honor Ms. Kamala Harris. I'm not going to get into the banter. I'm not going to get into politics tonight. We are all recovering from our impression of America. I'll just put it like that. But we want to salute you, Ms. Harris, Mrs. Harris, for the absolute great job you did in your 90-day plus campaign. You represented people who think like us, with class, with dignity, with respect, and with intelligence. And you did it in such a way that if that election last week would have been truly minus racism, misogynism, and all of those other things based solely on qualifications and character, you definitely would have won it. So we want to tell you, on behalf of all of us whom you represent, please, sister, keep your head up. We don't know what lies ahead. We know the God that you have served way before this campaign, in spite of what they said about you during the campaign, will guide your steps, and we may see you again on the national forum. But wherever it is you're headed, we just pray Godspeed to you. We love you. We appreciate you for being willing to represent us. God bless. Dialogue with Dozie next Monday night, 8 p.m., YouTube and Facebook. We appreciate you. We out.